they would have at those different locations, as well as those that come and volunteer in the warehouse as well. So
this is Faith in Action. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Our two guests today are Sue Spencer, who's the director of Faith in Action for the Broome County Council of Churches. We've been talking about the Lives of Commitment breakfast coming up. And also Lana Rouff, who is an honoree for the community. So we have folks from 3 different areas who have been nominated by a hardworking group of folks. The breakfast itself is, to me, bringing the community together in that one room and seeing all these folks who have come to honor, but to say thank you, and I think also to encourage. Doesn't some?
Oh, sure.
Some of this comes out of that.
I think the Lives of Commitment is the most inspiring event that I've ever been to, and not only does it inspire people, it makes everybody feel good because it's very upbeat and it's a positive thing in sometimes negative world. You know, I mean, there's a lot of need in our community, as there is in every community, and I think it's nice to see the other side. You know, that there are people out there, and I really don't think we realize how many volunteers are out there doing things.
Sure.
We live in a very rich community with a lot of organizations and programs that have opportunities for volunteerism. The more I learn, it's amazing, and the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a very time-consuming thing. It can be once a month. We have volunteers that only help us once a month, but it's a huge benefit for us. And it doesn't have to be any, you know, a lot of people think, oh, what do I have to offer? But just sometimes your time and is all that matters. You know?
Talking to Don Makers, who's one of the engineers who does the ramps, he also does tax counseling.
Yes.
Not tax preparation, tax return preparation for folks as part of his volunteer work.
And he also volunteers at Action for Older Persons with the insurance, health insurance too. So
many people have hours and hours to give and are glad to give it. It sure beats sitting at home in your rocking chair.
That's true.
But at the same time, if you only had an hour or 2 a week, there's a slot that if you look for it, you'll find that.
Oh, I'm sure there is. I mean, we even have, we do something in my program called reassurance calls for those seniors that are home alone and maybe feeling isolated. And it's just maybe a weekly call. And we actually have clients that are interested in doing the reassurance calls for other people because, you know, they can't get out of the house, but they would love to call somebody else and maybe cheer somebody else up. So it's kind of like a fun little, you know, client calling client, you know.
Well, I'm smiling about this because when I first I was the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church of Ulysses in Trumansburg, and I was only there for a couple of weeks, and I got a call once from one of the elderly at-home members. I don't like to call them shut-ins. I like to call them at-home members. And she was calling just to see how I was doing. Yeah. She spent about a minute and a half just calling to say, I was thinking about you today, just hope you're doing okay. And I tried to continue the conversation, but she had other calls to make. And then a few days later, she called me again. That was her ministry to me. Mm-hmm. So, and it wasn't a part of a program, it's because she had a heart of compassion and she understood the work of the minister, but she also wanted to keep in touch with some of the other folks in the church.
Sure.
It was a wonderful ministry.
It's 10 minutes out of your week to make a phone call.
Yeah.
And I have a great story for you.
I could use a story.
I have volunteers that work in my offices, and I really needed someone to coordinate volunteers to do visits. And I found a wonderful volunteer. She's given her time to the council for many years, and she came in to start doing that. Well, we kind of have a lack of visitors at this time. She's taken it upon herself that if she can't find a visitor for them, she's giving them a reassurance call once a week until she can find a visitor.
Wonderful.
And it's just amazing to listen to her in there, talk to them. And she probably calls 5 or 6 people every day that she's in there. And we'll never know the full effect of what those phone calls are. But But I just find that, I mean, I think we all innately want to help other people.
Yeah.
And I think when we finally find that niche that we can fit into, it's just a wonderful experience
Yeah, I
for
agree.
everybody.
Lana, you have a theater degree.
I do.
And you kind of, when we did the interview previously, you kind of said everybody needs to have a degree like that. But tell me about what you did at the Forum. You helped raise money at the Forum.
I did, with a gentleman named Bob Best. At that time, they were refurbishing the Forum. At that time, it was called, I guess, the Capri Theater.
Oh, yes.
And we raised money for the little plaques that you'll see on some of the seats, to enable that to move forward.
Right, to the conversion from an old movie house
That's right.
into the Broome County Performance Space.
That's correct.
Performing Arts Center.
Yes.
And what other, tell me a couple more things that you've done.
Oh, my.
Girl Scouts. You
That's
talked.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
You started in Girl Scouts.
I was a Girl Scout and earned my curve bar, which at that time was equivalent to the gold, and I had wonderful experiences there. And I think it taught me an awful lot about giving, about volunteering, and when I came to this community, I decided I wanted to take a Girl Scout group, and which I did at, I believe it was the Presbyterian Church in the south side of Binghamton, and we were there for maybe 2 or 3 years. And I run into several of those girls occasionally, and it's so nice to see what they've done. And when I had my daughter, Katie, we also had a Girl Scout troop with a wonderful gal, and she is an incredible volunteer. Her name is Nancy Hargrave, and we had another Girl Scout troop. Did an awful lot, and hopefully instilled in them a feeling of and wanting to do for others.
Yeah, yeah. So you have quite the interfaith and ecumenical connection. You also told the story about meeting a priest.
Oh yes, in Girl Scouts, yes.
Yeah.
I sat on their board of directors, and I never realized that I would ever meet a priest face to face. I'm not Catholic, I'm Jewish, and we became very good friends and had a lot of fun and laughs together and wonderful discussions. And I'm not sure where he is now, but if he's out there, I give him my best.
Well, that sense of family and community within people of faith is always inspiring. You know, no matter the stories or the people's names. And I think part of the Encounter program helps us transmit this to a much wider audience. So the Lives of Commitment Breakfast is coming up on May 3rd at the Doubletree by
That's
Hilton. And it starts breakfast is at 7:30?
Around 7:30, they'll put out the buffet. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a great breakfast.
And then at 8 o'clock, what happens?
The programs will begin, and we will talk about the honorees and give out the awards, and then we have a great keynote speaker this year.
Who is the keynote?
It's Dr. Joe Selapak, my boss.
Yeah, and one of our Encounter co-hosts.
That's
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
and he's doing the keynote this year,
Yeah.
so I'm very excited about that.
Well, I hope he's working on it now because it's going to take a lot of preparation for him to do that.
I hope so too, you know, but of course I have to introduce him, so
Well,
that'll take a while.
be very careful. Be very careful. When we talk about commitment, this is a commitment of time that it takes to be a volunteer. It's a commitment of energy because both spiritual energy as well as physical energy, you have to be able to move around and get out in the community. It's also a commitment of your faith experience. The folks who are involved are coming from all walks of life and all different faith communities.
That's correct. That's correct.
And I think you see that in once again, the table sponsorships around the room.
Right.
And again, that's part of the sense of Broome County's being rich in faith experiences that are shared.
Yes. Our volunteer, I mean, we have no restrictions on volunteers other than that they're willing to give time and that type of thing. We have all different faiths. We have different walks of life. You know, everybody comes from a different story, and they're volunteering for, probably everybody has their own reason for that too.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, you're talking about giving time and energy. I think also volunteering, I see a lot of just giving of a deeper part of themselves, and I think that's where the commitment comes in, because they get very connected with what they're doing, and it's hard to describe that connection, you know.
Yeah.
But I've seen volunteers get into volunteering for us, and they find it's much more than they ever expected, to the point where they are totally committed to that certain person, to do things like become their power of attorney and go with them through the process of illness and needing care, and it becomes bigger than they ever expected.
Lana, can you just in a minute or so talk about what you get out of this?
Well, when I was asked to be the honoree, I thought to myself, you know, they're going to ask me, why do I do this? And that was a hard question for me, especially when there are papers up to my elbows on my desk, and I don't know what to do first. But it is really essentially that you make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think making a difference generally gives you a wonderful well-being, that you've perhaps changed somebody's life, you've changed perhaps the world in a small way. That's terribly important to me.
Yeah. And these one step at a time kind of commitments that we have, we don't realize sometimes until that letter of thanks comes from someone. In fact, when we did the interview with Al, who works at the hospital, he read a note that he'd received from someone, thanking him for what contribution he had made to someone in their last days in the hospital. Well, thank you both for joining us for this program, looking at the Lives of Commitment Breakfast. Once again, May 3rd, 7:30 in the morning at the Doubletree Hotel. There's still time to get a reservation. You don't need a ticket, but you do need a reservation.
Yes.
That's $35
per person.
Per person. Right. And the phone number is 724-9130. That's 724-9130, and that's the Broome County Council of Churches office.
That's right.
They needn't ask for you personally, but
they can, but they don't need to.
Okay.
The people at the front desk can take care of it too.
You are Sue Spencer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Faith and Action Volunteers Coordinator for the Broome County Council of Churches, and Lana Rouff, who is an honoree, the community honoree for the time and talent that you've shared with the
And thank you for the Council of Churches for all that they do.
Amen to that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I want to thank you for joining us for the Encounter program. Our appreciation expressed to WBNG for television and for the airing of the audio track WNBF radio. So many thanks. I'm Jeff Kellam, hoping that in the coming week you will be gentle with people and with yourself.